Is there a reason minimum wage in the USA doesn't increase with inflation like military salaries? Because business opposes increases in the minimum wage, and has a lot of influence in both political parties. I'll take a shot at this. One possible scenario could be due to lobbying against increasing minimum wage from various private companies. Think about it from this perspective. Back in the mid-2000s there was a huge uproar over trying to adjust waitress jobs to minimum wage, instead of the below minimum wage value that they still currently get while relying on tips. The result of that was that the food industry of various big businesses fought extremely hard to shut that down. And in the end nothing changed. Also think about it from this perspective as well. What are the industries that are going to be most affected by a minimum wage change? Usually a food industry and other various low-end jobs. Those businesses are probably going to fight very hard not to have that wage changed. That cuts into their profits. If you have the right lobbying power, then you can be cost-effective at preventing mandatory cost increases for your business. I think there's a lot of private firms that lobby for certain changes to not happen. If you want to dive a little bit deeper, think about how investors influence the decisions of major companies. When investors get involved, they expect to see a return based on growth of a company that they've invested in. Should that go to a negative, then the investor pulls out. This issue is incredibly big with certain subscription-based services like Netflix, and also in the gaming industry with various AAA companies producing subpar fodder. If an investor doesn't like the direction that a company is taking for a particular product, which may or may not grant them a dividend, then they pull out. Another aspect is that just about anyone can become an investor, but that doesn't mean that they have the knowledge base or passion of what they are investing into. I think political parties have very little to deal with it, and using the term is kind of dumb, like saying whenever you can't find the explanation for something you say Illuminati, as was the term for about a decade ago. Not saying you said anything wrong, just adding to what you said in your post. Also think about it like this. I'm a federal employee, and one thing that is transparent is the income. Your starting pay and the amount on your future raises is not going to be adjusted based off some boss's whim. It's either you get a raise or you don't. Private companies are not subjected to such things. Granted, with the right words and persuasion, you can end up with a higher income, which is kind of the randomness of it all, which federal jobs are not subjected to. Either way, feel free to give me some feedback on this, as this was just an observation that I've noticed. Military salaries absolutely don't increase with inflation. Inflation has been overtaking mil base pay increases for as long as I can remember. It's very simple. Private industry's only motivating factor is profits. Higher wages always mean less profit. Shareholders and owners don't like that, so they will always try to get their labor for the lowest possible cost. Not the answer. But the minimum wage is only part of the issue. So many employers, Walmart, McD's, Target, Amazon, etc., are being effectively subsidized by the U.S. taxpayer. They pay minimum wage, but a substantial number of these employees are on food stamps, Medicare, etc., and then they create schedules so that these employees don't qualify for employer-sponsored health care, dropping more costs on the U.S. taxpayer. So the U.S. taxpayer is effectively funding wages for many of these companies' employees, creating more profit these employers. Just to be clear, military salaries, at least enlisted, absolutely do not keep up with inflation. One thing to note is that the federal government controls military salaries, but state governments can set minimum wage for their states. And counties, local governments can do the same for their jurisdictions. So part of the argument is that there is not a need for a federal minimum wage increase because the cost of living differs across the country. And so the minimum should be set based on the minimum appropriate in the country. And then where the minimum appropriate for a region is higher, that region can and arguably should set it higher. Negative answer. Because we don't people who do minimum wage jobs to feel like they're productive members of society. We want to have an underclass to compare ourselves favorably to. Less negative answer. People who vote for both parties believe, erroneously, that raising the minimum wage hurts the economy. Corruption. GIF. You have to remember that the US economy is money-driven. Those that have it don't want others to have it. Those that don't have it don't have the power to change things to be able to get more of it. Why XYZ isn't implemented? Money. It's always money. Why the US hasn't done ABC? Money. The bigwigs want to keep it and separate themselves from those that don't have it and to keep those that don't have it from obtaining it. It's not really our choice why the government doesn't do something. But the answer is always money. Like military salaries? You just answered your own question. The salaries are being increased in the areas that the US cares about. Because corporations control politics. Please answer without saying, because the political party I don't like is evil and wants to destroy America. There is a particular political party that very publicly opposes raising the minimum wage. And that includes linking it to inflation. If you aren't willing to hear that, you aren't looking for an actual answer. Capitalism. Private companies will pay as little as possible wherever they can. Because you doing the work is important to them, but paying you for doing it isn't. So, you want an answer to a policy question, but without any criticism of the people making the policy? Because the US wants incentives. If civilians had livable wages, universal healthcare, affordable education and housing, then many people wouldn't feel the need to join the military. One thing to consider is that there is a federal, state, and even county-based minimum wage. Federal minimum wage applies to the whole country with wildly different costs of living. So, one minimum wage doesn't apply well to everyone. So the argument goes. On the flip side, counties can be hyper-local about setting their minimum wage to match the cost of living, but if counties have wildly different minimum wages, then companies can move counties or workers can choose to work in a different county. It's very hard, impossible, to answer you without throwing shade on the Republicans and their corporate donors. Corporate greed. Easy answer.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. TooAfraidToAsk is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.